What's going on, everyone, and welcome into the Fantasy Football Starts of the Week. We're heading into week number 15, and we are heading into the Fantasy Football Playoffs. So congratulations to everyone that made it this far. Now the road to the championship begins now. First up, let's start with a quarterback start of the week, and we're going with Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy's coming off of a sensational week in week number 14, over 350 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, good enough for 22.42 fantasy points. This week gets a plus matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. We know the Arizona Cardinals defense hasn't been that great in the NFL this season. They ranked 24th in overall pass defense. So I think that this is going to be a game that the 49ers just really put it on the Cardinals. I wouldn't be surprised if CMC, he scores 1 or 2 touchdowns, but I think that Brock Purdy, he has a connection with Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. This offense has just been absolutely on fire the past couple of weeks. They sit at 10-3 right now, heading into this week. So I think that this is a plus matchup. Brock Purdy is my start and lock of the week at the quarterback position. So I really feel confident in him. Another guy I really feel confident in is the running back start of the week is Saquon Barkley. At the time of this recording, Barkley is going to be playing in Monday Night Football. So we'll see what Saquon can do against the Green Bay Packers, which ranks 24th overall in rush defense. But next week, when we look at week number 15, they are facing off against the New Orleans Saints. Now, the Saints' rush defense is normally a defense that I like to stick away from. I know that they're ranked number 10. They're still a top 10 defense in rushing category. But the past 2 weeks, the Lions have been able to run the football pretty handily on them. Chuba Hubbard is coming off of a game. The Panthers, I know that they're 1-11, but they rushed for over 200 yards rushing in that game. I think that this is going to be a game that doesn't really have that many points. The Saints offense has been Tommy DeVito is still figuring out with that offense. But I think that Saquon Barkley going up against the Saints rush defense that has struggled in the past couple of weeks, I think that he's due for a good game. I think he's going to have a good game tonight against the Packers. We'll see how it plays out, but I feel good about Saquon Barkley's chances. Maybe scoring a touchdown against the New Orleans Saints, but even if he doesn't, I think that the yardage is going to be good enough to earn him the start of the week at the running back position. So start Saquon against the Saints and also start Cooper Kupp against the Commanders. The Commanders secondary is a secondary that I've gone at many, many times, whether it's a quarterback position, whether it's a wide receiver position. But Cooper Kupp coming off of a great game, even the loss against the Ravens in overtime, 8 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Good enough for 25.5 fantasy points if you are playing in PPR league. Still good enough if you're just playing in the standard league. But looking now into week 1 of your fantasy football playoffs, Cooper Kupp, you are starting him. Do not put him on your bench. The Commanders secondary is ranked 31st out of 32 teams. They are one of the worst secondaries when it comes to fantasy. So I think that Matthew Stafford, he really had a good game against the Ravens. I think that now going up against the Commanders, the Rams still in the playoff hunt. They really need this victory. So look for Cooper Kupp. I think that he's going to have a phenomenal game. Look for Matthew Stafford. I almost put Matthew Stafford on my quarterback start of the week, so I also would feel confident if you need a quarterback, can really vault you to a win in your fantasy playoffs this week. Go for Matthew Stafford and also go for Cooper Kupp against the Commanders defense that's been struggling against the pass all year. Now let's move on to the sits of the week. The first one is the quarterback sit of the week, Tua Tagovailoa. Like I mentioned earlier, this is also a Monday Night Football game. The Titans and the Dolphins will play. We'll see how that plays out. But the Dolphins offense, they have been on fire. But this is a matchup that I really don't like for Tua. And this one, the Jets, they're coming off of a game where they shut down C.J. Stroud. Stroud was putting up MVP numbers in the last couple of weeks. That offense got shut down, only scored 6 points in that game. So the Jets defense, they definitely been locked in. They've been a hard defensive unit to really put up fantasy points, especially at the quarterback position this year. So I would stay away from Tua. I think that he's probably going to get 1 or 2 touchdowns, but I just don't think that he's going to give you that high ceiling that, he usually does. I'm sure that we'll see if he has a good game against the Titans secondary that also has been struggling. But going up against the Jets defense that just shut down C.J. Stroud, really like the Jets. So their defense has been rolling all year, but can't really trust Tua this week, especially in a win or go home scenario in fantasy. Moving on to the running back sit of the week is Brian Robinson Jr. Now, keep in mind that Brian Robinson Jr. got hurt in the last game that we saw him in the Dolphins game. Now, the Commanders were on the bye week. As you see there, no point projection total for Robinson right now at the time that we're recording this. But I expect him to play in this one. But I don't really like this matchup either. The Los Angeles Rams are ranked a top 10 rush defense. And, Antonio Gibson's now in the mix. So this is more of a split carry now. Brian Robinson Jr., he's really been one of the stories of fantasy football. He's a top 5 fantasy running back. I think he's really good. I'm sure that if you have Brian Robinson Jr., you know he really has carried your team if you don't have that quote unquote, lead running back on your team. But Brian Robinson Jr., I definitely like the season that he's had, but don't really like this matchup against the Los Angeles Rams. They've been really stout against the rush. So the Commanders' offense has also been struggling, so that doesn't really give me any hope too. So Brian Robinson Jr., find another running back to start outside of him. Moving on to the last one, we have our wide receiver sit of the week, and we're going towards the Pittsburgh Steelers offense and George Pickens going up against the Colts. The Colts are a mid-level secondary. They're ranked number 14th in fantasy. Pickens not coming off of a great game. I know he had a ton of targets, 5 receptions, only 19 yards. That gives you 6.9 points per reception. But with the injury to Kenny Pickett, don't really feel great about this offense, especially against the Colts defense. They're still in the playoff hunt. They have 7 wins right now. So that's a team that's just fighting for wins. Same with the Steelers. They're fighting for the playoff spot too. But this offense, if Kenny Pickett was in the mix, I would definitely feel more confident in George Pickens. With Mitchell Trubisky at the helm, just don't really trust that connection. You don't really know what Trubisky's connection is. Is it Pat Freiermuth? Is it Pickens? Is it Deontay Johnson? There's just a lot of question marks with this offense right now, especially with the injury at the quarterback. So at a time like this, can't really start George Pickens. He's been up and down pretty much all year. So we appreciate that. And that is the fantasy football starts of the week heading into round 1 of the fantasy football playoffs and also week 15 of the NFL season.